Well, the walkers do, and their 30-kilometre final is a few minutes away. Well, they've been labelled a bit odd, a bit eccentric in their time. They don't mind that. They produce some great champions. Steve Barry of Wales won it last time. The Australian David Smith is the clear favourite this time. But England are quietly confident, as Harry Gratian reports.
And right at the back are the two British boys, McCombie and Barry.
Ian McCombie performed pretty well in the Los Angeles Olympics, and along with his current teammates provided a very useful assault on the medals in Edinburgh this morning. But there's always controversy surrounding the walkers.
It's unusual for two reasons. First of all, it looks more cumbersome than a lot of athletic events, and secondly because of its rules. The rules of having one foot on the ground at all times and having a straight leg. People see these rules as being broken a lot of the time, and that you're cheating by running, which of course is not the intention of anybody, even the ones who do get disqualified don't intend to get disqualified. But it is the difficult job the judges have in trying to decide who's cheating and who's not. It causes the public interest.
What kind of race will this be then? Because I understand you're second favourite really for the race.
Yes,
the Australian is the clear favourite.
Yeah, well, we've heard rumour that the Australian's going to go for the world record. So he'll be going out like a bat out of hell. And then there'll be another race behind of everybody else. So we're really going to have to judge it as it goes. Anything could happen really, especially in this weather.
How much training do you do then during the course of the build-up to something like the Commonwealth Games?
In mileage terms, if I'm in full training and I'm building up towards something that's fairly big, before I taper down I might do anything up towards 100 miles a week. And then I do daily exercises, press-up, sit-up, stretching, that kind of thing, and I do a lot of weights as well.
You do the walk, yeah, you do the walk all night. You do the walk all night.
No sunshine for the walkers today. This is the scene at Meadowbank. They're all set for that 30-kilometre final. And waiting in the rain, Stuart Story.
Well, the big news is that Dave Smith of Australia has withdrawn, and that was the story just an hour ago. The favourite, as you said earlier, but he's said now to be ill and unable to take part. So 11 starters, and the conditions, I suppose, suit the walkers unlike most other events. An undulating course, well, one would expect that in this part of the world, and it skirts the Firth of Forth, and it really is quite picturesque, if you can call it picturesque, on a day like this. Just waiting now before they start off on this 16-mile, 1,128 yard, and believe it or not, 2 feet towards the end of this walk. The race itself over 30 kilometres. As you hear, Simon Baker of Australia will be wearing number 19, number 454 in the middle, that's Steve Partington of the Isle of Man. 310 is Chris Maddox, of course, 29-year-old from Dawlish. And the best walkers in the Commonwealth here, so there's no real problem. 314, you see Ian McCombie pacing in the background. Well, he now is the favourite for this title. Number 19, that's Simon Baker, 5 feet 7, 2 hours 9.20 this season. 581, that's Graham Seater of New Zealand, from Christchurch, the teacher. And it really is, I suppose, an ordeal over this sort of distance in this sort of terrain. So Simon Baker, the Australian, takes up the lead. They've got about 3/4 of the lap to go, and then they'll go out of the West Gate and on to the London Road, then head out on the Craigentinny Avenue, and then on to the Firth of Forth, onto that coast. So Baker leads, and Sowell in second place. That's Willie Sowell of Australia, and number 314, Ian McCombie. McCombie tucked in on the inside, and he's followed by Chris Maddox of England. Early days, of course, and but the weather conditions do suit the walkers, and but I must say that they won't relish the latter stages of this race, because the last 2 miles are clearly up a steep incline. The two people to watch, and one of them just alongside Chris Maddox there, that's Francois Lapointe. Sorry, it's LeBlanc, the other Canadian. He is he's been walking very well over 20 kilometres, 1 hour 23.1. So he's very much in with a chance, and Lapointe, the tall Canadian, was following about 5 or 6 metres behind. Now they're leaving the west exit and moving out onto the road, and you can see the preparations. Just to remind you, just over 18 miles. I think I said 16, I meant 18. And up till 1978, the race was over 20 miles. It then went to 30 kilometres. So really, we don't consider this to be a game's record. They're game's bests, because the conditions of the courses, they change so much. And really, to consider one a record against another is not really satisfactory. So Simon Baker moving off out there, 14th in the Olympic 20 kilometres. An engineer, 29th in the World Championships too. And quite a lot of interest in the early stages. And they've gone off at a fair old pace, I must say. And Chris Maddox, 16th in the Olympic 50 kilometres. He's tucked in on the inside, so he's used to the distance, of course. Last time, Steve Barry of Wales won this title with 2 hours 10.16. But when you consider that the times that have been walked this season, 2 hours 5.59, that's Smith of Australia. Well, you know, one wonders how far this event can go before it actually does become running. So Maddox, the second in the Commonwealth trials over 30 kilometres. And he's taking an early lead here. Past the badminton hall on the left. Willie Sowell, incidentally, number 64 in this walk, is the oldest Australian athlete at the Games. He's 44 years old. He may be the oldest from any team in track and field. There he is in 4th place at the moment. McCombie tucked in the middle of the two, chasing Chris Maddox. He is now the favourite. So Portobello, Musselburgh, Preston Pans, then they turn at Cockenzie and then back, and it's the same course that the marathon runners will take later on in this competition. Early days yet, an awful long way to go.
Progress report on that from Stuart Story.
Just about 5 miles gone in this 30-kilometre walk, and the 4 men that led as they left the stadium still maintaining their position ahead of the rest of the field. There are 2 bunches, and the 2 Englishmen up front, Ian McCombie and Chris Maddox. Ian McCombie took the lead from Maddox at about 2.5 miles. They've been toing and froing ever since that. But for the walkers, its 5-kilometre time was 21 minutes and 31 seconds, and that's very fast indeed. And you can see the 2 Australians, Simon Baker, number 19 on the right. He's in 3rd place at the moment, and then Willie Sowell, the other Australian, next to him. And I must say that McCombie and particularly Maddox have pushed along and have tried to extend the 2 Australians, and there's just the smallest gap now beginning to open. The margin about a mile and a half ago was about 14 seconds for the second group. They're the second group, and it really is a second group now, because the 2 English boys have made a move. And when you consider that the pace is around about 7-minute miles, there it is, there's the margin, then they're looking somewhere between 2 hours 10 and 2 hours and 12 for the full distance. But much of the early part has been reasonably flat, but they have that uphill second half, particularly at the end, and that will of course diminish the time just a little bit. So Ian McCombie of England in the lead, and Chris Maddox of England in second place, with the Australians now being left just a little by about 20 metres or so.
30 kilometres all the way, that's 19 miles or so. I don't know quite how far they've got, but Stuart Story does.
Well, there's the Meadowbank Stadium, and the leader, Simon Baker, within about a mile, probably a little bit less, of this main athletic stadium. That's the approach that he will make, and he took over the lead at about the halfway stage, and it really has been an even-paced walk. But just to bring you up to date with the positions at the moment, Baker leads with LeBlanc of Canada about a minute behind him, then McCombie of England. So that's how they are. We'll see them shortly. But Baker, as I said, took over at halfway, and he's pretty well responsible for the very, very good pace. He's going to be inside the Commonwealth Games best performance. And when you look at his 5 kilometre splits, the first one was 21 minutes 31, then it went 21:15, then 21:04, 21:04, and at 25 kilometres, 1 hour 45.57, which gave another 21 minute 3 second 5,000 metre split. So he really has been walking a very fast and even pace, and I must say that the early leaders paid the penalty for trying to get away from this Australian. That was Chris Maddox and Ian McCombie. McCombie has found life very difficult indeed, particularly over the last few miles, and he's been overtaken by LeBlanc of Canada. So looking back down the course, in second place is Guillaume LeBlanc of Canada, the 24-year-old, and the margin of the leader at the moment is about equivalent to a minute, and that's a substantial lead. There he is. And whilst the conditions have not been conducive to most other sports today, certainly the walkers will have welcomed that cool effect of that rain. And there's the time for you to see, and just to remind you that the Commonwealth Games best is 2 hours 10 minutes, 0.16, 16 seconds. Steve Barry, 1982, well, this man's been well inside. And remember, he didn't start the favourite, he was third ranked in the Commonwealth when he started out. The favourite, David Smith of Australia, failed to start through a late illness. The Baker, very, very tall, and the stadium you see in the background, so he's got the target well within sight. He always had the reputation of being a fast finisher, a strong finisher, and he's proved that, and proved his case in that respect. Baker, born in Oakley, Victoria, coached by Craig Hillard at the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra. He's one of an elite group of athletes attending that Institute of Sport. 14th in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles, and last year was 9th in the World Student Games. So a walker to be reckoned with in world terms, not just Commonwealth terms, and those welcome applause will be most welcome indeed. Just keep your eye on the clock, because the sort of pace that they've been at throughout was about 2 hours and 7 minutes, and that compares favourably with the fastest time in the Commonwealth this year, 2:5.59 by the non-starter Smith. But as I began this race by saying, it's very difficult to compare the times because of the undulations and the variation in undulations on these courses. But a lot of interest in the Canadian. You can see LeBlanc in the background. Closing, the Canadian champion was 4th in the Olympic 20-kilometre walk, disqualified incidentally in the longer 50-kilometre walk, and today no disqualifications to my knowledge. There have been 6 umpires along the course, and for a pull out of this race they needed 3 complaints from 3 umpires for irregular walking technique. And this will be a welcome sight. Little smile he allows himself, and he's got about a lap and a quarter of this 400-metre track, and that must be a nice feeling. Here he goes. And now soon the crowd in the stadium will see him, Simon Baker of Australia, well within the Commonwealth Games best performance. And he'll go on the outside of the cones to begin with, and then he'll move to the inside. Ignore the time at the moment. There it goes. The crowd who came here to see the start of this walk have been following it with our pictures on the main scoreboard, so they've been able to follow the progress of the walk. And LeBlanc of Canada has had quite a sprint in over the last mile and a half, and he was always considered to be a danger, the draftsman from Montreal, and he proved himself. He was 6th in the World Championships over 50 kilometres, hasn't quite got the speed to finish against the likes of Baker in this shorter walk. 50 seconds, so he's made up 10, 12 or so seconds over the last mile and a bit. And he just looked across to see Baker, the Australian. And Baker, the leader now, has half a lap advantage over the man in second place. We are LeBlanc of Canada. The engineering student at the University of Montreal has done well, but Baker, well.
Runner-up of the Australian Championship, the Australian trial.
LeBlanc
LeBlanc
received by what really has to be described in the conditions as a very good crowd indeed, appreciating a long and arduous battle over this Edinburgh terrain, along by the berth of fourth. Simon Baker then, third ranked in the Commonwealth, coming through for the gold medal in this 30-kilometre walk. Considerable battle with Ian McCombie up to halfway. Chris Maddox had already dropped away. He tried to stay but paid the penalty. And now we have a new Commonwealth Games record and the fastest walk over 30 kilometres ever in the United Kingdom. And here comes 3:14, Ian McCombie. McCombie, who, when David Smith dropped out of this race, must have thought that the gold medal could have been his. He found it very difficult over the final third of this walk, and I suppose the fact that Baker moved so confidently away just after the halfway stage injured his psychological state. And here comes the silver medalist, LeBlanc of Canada, with McCombie with still the lap to walk. LeBlanc takes the silver, well inside the previous Commonwealth Games best performance. Good walk by him, well inside his best time, and it's left for Ian McCombie of England to make his way. McCombie, one of the best prospects for some years in the United Kingdom, but he still has a little way to go to match the Eastern Europeans, and now he is, and also he has the knowledge now that he has a little way to go to match the Australian and the Canadian that won the gold and silver medals here. But he's done well to get the bronze. He looked very uncomfortable after halfway. McCombie, United Kingdom best this year at 2 hours 7.56. 7 minutes 56 seconds, I should say, and that was done on this course in the English trials at the end of April. So the English walkers had experience of this course by sensibly bringing their trials up here at the beginning of the year. And now the man who did much of the leading for the first half a dozen miles, in fourth place, Chris Maddox of England, 29 years old, 16th in the Olympic 50-kilometre walk, was second in the English trials over this Commonwealth Games distance, about 5 minutes down on Baker, the gold medalist. Maddox went out with a vengeance to start, and he too paid the penalty for the very fast early pace. The bronze medal now, the personal stopwatch clicked, and McCombie has got the bronze medal. McCombie and LeBlanc greeting each other after the long journey.
Man in fourth place.
So the walk having been completed, just to confirm the gold medal to Simon Baker of Australia, the silver medal to Guillaume Leblanc of Canada, and the bronze medal to Ian McCombie of England, and Chris Maddox acquitted himself well too, just out of the medals in fourth place. And now the presentation for the 30-kilometre walk that finished about half an hour ago or so, probably a little longer than that.
The winner of the gold medal and the 1986 Commonwealth Games champion for the 30-kilometre walk for men, Simon Baker, representing Australia.
New Commonwealth Games best for Simon Baker. Found it a very sore process of walking to this rostrum indeed. He's obviously suffered a little, but the smile.
Second, and the winner of the silver medal is Guillaume Leblanc, representing Canada.
Guillaume Leblanc of Canada, the silver medal. He too inside the
Third, and the winner
championship
of the bronze medal
best.
is Ian McCombie, representing England.
Ian McCombie, and most of the leading in the early stages, and then got the bronze medal at the end.
Well, that medal ceremony over. Another victory for Australia. But at the far end of the stadium, the girls out for the hurdles. There's confirmation of the time, incidentally, for the 30-kilometre walk. 2 hours, 7 minutes and 47 seconds. Canada the silver, England the bronze.
First ever championship walk.